Boom. Here we go. Hey now, and how are you doing? Want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. Man, we're gonna have some fun this half hour. I just met my friend Donna, and we're gonna have some great conversations about past lives, about current lives, and what is it? Saturn,
Saturn
the
return.
Saturn return. There you go. I can't wait. How are you doing today, Donna?
I'm doing great. I'm one of those that I've survived so many crises in my life that every day I'm really grateful now. It took me
Mhm.
a while to get there, but no matter what the world gives me, I don't like it sometimes, but I am grateful every day. And I think if we as a human race start to look at the positive instead of the negative that we're facing, you might have a better day. So I live in Lake Tahoe. The sun's out, clouds in the sky. I'm having a good day.
Yep. Any day above ground is a great way to start, and with that gratitude. But I looked at your profile when we were choosing, and thank you for the choice. But like, oh my God, since almost from the moment that you were born, there has been some sort of messages or things that have happened to you that has brought more and more clarity. I mean, you've been in the hospital many times in life.
It's funny because I'm a health nut. Okay, and I've always been a health nut. But let me just give you the thumbnail of the 6 times that I didn't think I'd still be on the planet. At 6 years old, I had malnutrition and not enough food. So you can tell I had a tough start with the family and in and out of comas for, 10 days. And I didn't know if I really wanted to live because my best girlfriend, that was just 6 years old at the time and had come home from school a few weeks before that, went to sleep and never woke up.
Oh my God.
So between that crisis and then at 16, I was a hopeful. I wanted to get in the Winter Olympics and had my first heart surgery. Okay, a valve, my aortic valve. Okay, so move forward in time, and I moved to Hawaii for a while. Then I moved to Los Angeles, and then I'm hitting all time low. They don't care about you in Hollywood and whatever. I'm thinking of suicide. And then I got this opportunity to go back and MC the Miss Hawaii pageant because I'm a former Miss Hawaii. And that DC-10 takes off and explodes and burns to the ground in seconds. That's the one that altered me. That was March 1st, 1978. We can go into more of those details later, but move forward to March 1st, 2002. I've been a surfer all my life. So there you go. I now have melanoma stage 3. I'm in San Francisco again for surgery. Another March 1st comes up. 2000, let's see, we had 6 now. And open heart surgery. They're going to cut me open and they're going to replace the valve. Okay. I'm done. I think I'm done. Then comes the pandemic, and I think I can handle this. I've had some tough times. In the middle of the pandemic, I had to have surgery again to replace that valve. What they did was they put one valve instead of another, instead in the other one. So there you go. Who thought I didn't? But 3 of those dates are on March 1st.
All right, so if I'm not going to hang out with you on March 1st,
No, no,
just,
no. I'm lucky now. I'm lucky
oh,
now.
okay. All right. Well, then we'll have to work it for next March 1st. But, you know, those are big things. I mean, each one of those things. I mean, at 6 years old, to lose a friend,
You know.
how that sets you off, you're just coming up with your own thoughts. It's not even, when we talk about memories, you generally don't have memories till around that time.
It was very strange. Her name is Holly, and we were just connected. But something magical happened. And that was during my open heart surgery. I crossed out of my body. I went to the other side. My parents had all died. I saw them, but I saw Holly. And this is what I think I want to give to your listeners. She was there. You don't really see them. You see kind of a hologram, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? And you feel their energy. But she said, if I would have lived, then you would have not left Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. She said, and then she started to name some of the things I had done. She said, you wouldn't have skied the Alps in Switzerland, and you wouldn't have traveled to New Zealand, and you wouldn't have become Miss Hawaii. So I knew, she said, yes, I was assigned to look over you from this dimension, but I was
Mm.
allowed to spend those few years with you. She said, so we're always connected. I will never forget that moment because now I still feel she's here with me, you know?
And I agree. Again, years ago, I thought it was more entertainment, right? The mediumships and things like that.
Mhm.
And then I experienced a bunch of things, and I learned. I wanted to learn how to do mediumship, and I was until I started reading for people, and I was like, whoa, that's too much for me. I didn't want to live with the grief, the responsibility. It's not only living with the grief of families, like the gentleman that I read. It was he had his whole life, he never had a real romantic relationship. He finally met the woman of his dreams,
Mhm.
and they enjoyed Yankee games and things like that. And then she had breast cancer and passed away. And I didn't know any of that. And I said, I was picturing him. I said, first base, section 219. He goes 217. I go, okay, give me, and I go, there's a woman with, I go, excuse me, extremely large breasts and wearing a Yankee jersey. She goes, blonde hair? I go, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. And I go, she's just sending you love. There's just yellow roses all over. And, it was things like that that I was able to identify. But I would always then open my eyes because that's how I did my readings with my eyes closed. And I'd see
Yeah.
people crying. And I'm like, oh man, I don't want to do that. I know it's out of joy. And then I've had my own experience where you said when I attempted suicide, I shared with you earlier, but I had a voice that I saw, a shadow who identified as a Grandpa Mike, who I personally don't have a Grandpa Mike. It is through an ex-wife. It really is amazing when you have that type of impact. And I can't imagine what Holly, while she's with you all the time, that
Right.
first conversation
Mhm.
felt like.
It was overwhelming. And I also got to see my parents,
Mm.
that were up there and everything. So it explained a lot. I had lost like 11 people, over this period of 5 or 6 years, but the last one to lose was my stepdad. And I really love my stepdad. And uh I talked to him in the hospital. He was going in for just normal foot surgery. My mom had passed 2 years before that. And I hung up and he had a heart attack in the hospital and died in the hospital. So there
Wow.
was nothing I could do. And it
Mm.
was, I was in
Yeah.
California and then nothing they could do. But I was so overwhelmed. And when he told me, he said, if you'd have come back, which I would have, because they had just told him in the hospital before he went to surgery, somebody's going to have to take care of you for months and months. I would have flown back with my little daughter. And he said, and you'd have missed your symptoms because I had heart surgery 6 months after that. That's where
Mm.
I saw him when I crossed over during that. He said, it was my time to go. It was my time to be with your mom, and stuff. And you had a daughter to raise. So it was right for me to go and for you to stay. I'm telling you, the pain was gone in 30 seconds. I understood the love instead of the pain. So that's, we get depth in life if we choose, but sometimes it comes with a powerful lesson to get that depth and compassion.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's sort of what the bat means along with us for the peace, love, and bring a bat. It's, God or universe will, tap you a little bit. And then sometimes you get hit, with a bigger message. Hey, you're not doing the right thing. But I can't imagine that. But every time that I think I'm doing something right or I'm not on my path, I get the messages. And now I finally have been, I guess, less stubborn to to receive those than I had been in my past. And even this last example, this past month, everything aligned perfectly for me for success, and including re-energizing my podcast, which I truly love doing. But so when you went for your first heart surgery, right? That's at 16. That's also
16.
very formative years. These are
Mhm.
not,
Mhm.
you know,
Well, there's a little twist with this. My parents were divorced by then. My father's lawyers were better than my mom's lawyers. Her doctor said I don't need that yet to watch it, and wait. And his said no. So he won. And he dropped me off in Philadelphia. And so Philadelphia from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, an hour and a half,
Mhm.
left me there. And for 5 days, I went through surgery by myself
Oh my God.
because he had a court order on my mother, and she was the good one. So, at a very young age, you either complain, which I did whine it a lot, but you get past it and you say, if I am going to be the person I want to be, then I got something to learn from this. So with the years going on, I've learned it's not good, it's not bad, it's just a lesson. So I've really learned to clear those negativity and say they cannot affect my life anymore. I want to live in the present. I want to be enjoying it but that was my first one. And that really kicked me out for really competing as a ski racer. I ski to this day, but never that top level again that I was training for. So, but I took up surfing when I lived in Hawaii. So there you go. So,
Well, okay, so let's talk about that Hawaii. I mean, Miss Hawaii, besides the surfing and I have a story, a surfing story in Hawaii. But so how did you get to Hawaii, right? It's not
well,
near.
I was living in Pennsylvania.
Right,
I went to 2 years at the University of Montana in Missoula, and I was a skier for the ski team.
right.
The second year was a bad year. Sometimes you just have those. I looked at a gate and I fell. I just wasn't qualifying. I wasn't doing well. I'm sitting in the library in Missoula, Montana with my girlfriend. It's minus 30 outside with the wind and the snow coming sideways. And we looked at each other and said, how about going somewhere else our junior year? And she's from Montana. She said, they can't have out of state tuition. See, I was already paying it, but she said, I can't afford out of state. So we looked in Alaska and Hawaii, had no out of state tuition. And I go, this is a no brainer. So we went to an encyclopedia back then, saw a black and white picture and applied. And we arrived in Hawaii with not even any housing. So I lived there. I got my degree there. I went to college there. I served, and then I became Miss Hawaii. So it was something I wanted. I looked at it in Pennsylvania and Montana, but it didn't click. So I ran, and then I ran again. Then I ran again the third time. And it was like every time it was a personal rejection. And I swore I'd never run again. But then the next time I took voice lessons, I took singing lessons, I changed my hairstyle, the whole thing. The fourth time I lost. So right before the fifth time came up, about, like 3 months before, I said, you know what? If I'm honest with myself, I never really gave it my all because I never thought inside I was the best choice. Well, I changed that mindset and I said, I've been around. I am the best choice. I was taking the modeling classes, the act, I was doing it all. And I said, this is it. I'm giving my all. And if it's not, I'm done. And I actually think the judges probably said, give it to her. She's not going away. But I won. And so people said, oh my God, how did that happen? Well, I was persistent, but I radiated what I wanted from the inside out before it was always on the outside. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I was going to ask you, what made you want it so bad, right? Because we know our whys, and
Well, because I wanted to go to LA and I wanted to be an actress. And I knew
oh,
that would open up the doors for me. Guys had football or sports and everything. But back then, it was 1970. The women didn't have that opportunity. And I knew that would open up the doors. And it did.
yeah,
Not that the doors stayed open, but there you go.
yeah, but and how did it open the doors? Because again, in your profile, I know. I mean, you've been with, worked alongside, Robin Williams, Dick Van Dyke, who is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah. Good guy.
I mean, just to be around those people would be enough. But you got to work with them.
I did. I did. So I got signed at CBS Studios and I think 3 or 4 nights a week is what I was going, learning the skills and whatever, and lots of job interviews. But it really didn't click to the depth till after the plane crash. When I survived the plane crash and when I went on an interview then, it was like, I've survived a DC-10 plane crash. You can tell me I'm good or I'm bad, but I know who I am. See the difference. Before it was like, please hire me. Am I good enough? I had self-doubt, a lot of
Sure.
self-doubt. So that changed after the plane crash. So that's where all those opportunities, a lot of commercials, Richard Pryor I worked with, so yeah. So amazing, amazing people and some opportunities I'll never forget. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I could imagine. And and you're talking about the time frame. That was the heat of all of their, you know, at the top of their game. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
to show that the level of you are, the work that you did and you were prepared to do. So I can't not ask questions about the airplane, walking away from an, or maybe not walking, but getting
Yeah.
away from, living through a DC-10 crash. How that
Well,
ultimately.
this was March 1st, 1978. I was at an all-time low. The guy I broke up with, no acting was happening then. I didn't have money. It was spinning out, spinning
Mhm.
out. I was 30 years old at the time. And and then I got this opportunity to go to Hawaii and to MC the Miss Hawaii pageant. So this is 1978. I had been, sorry, Miss Hawaii in 1970. This is March 1st, 1978. So I thought this will change my life. And that's what I said. Maybe this trip will change my life. Well, it did. But what happened when I checked in, I just like came out of my mouth. I said, change my seat, just like that.
Mm.
And I switched, which is what kept me alive and that it didn't burn. So my little voice was there. It said, you still didn't want to change enough. So you had to be on this flight because I had changed the flight and went back to the original flight. So
Wow.
I couldn't walk down the runway, the little ramp there. I just stopped on the side. People are loading in front of me. I couldn't do it. Finally got my seat. And that's when I said a little prayer like, let my life change. Let it never be the same or
Mm.
let me die. So when I put that little line in there, let my life change, let it never be the same. Well, in 3 seconds, my life changed. At 167 miles per hour, the Continental DC-10 was just ready on liftoff. One, two, three tires exploded. We tilted. All the fuel to Hawaii caught on. He had to set it down because we'd burn in the air. And he gave up the left side of the aircraft. I had moved my seat from the left to the right and in an
Oh,
aisle. I know.
wow.
So that was that intuition that we all have if you listen to it.
And
If
that's
you
what I was
listen.
going to ask you about. So, is that the moment that you realized you had the intuition, you had the gift?
I knew I had it earlier, but I didn't pay attention. So this is what I teach when I teach it. I said, we pray, we ask for change, please change. Then we slow down, mindfulness, meditate. We get that gut feeling. That's that intuition. Then it happens. Then we get our reasoning in the way and we block it. That was foolish instead of action.
Mm.
That's what you need after you get your intuition. You have to act upon it. As
Yeah.
crazy as it seems, don't go down that street, call this client, whatever it is. I acted upon it. So I knew I had it. Sometimes I didn't act upon it, but I did in the plane crash. And I'm saying that everybody has intuition if they slow down, trust it, and don't talk themselves out of it because they go, I'll do that later. I won't do it. And then it's gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, exactly. And that actually again recently happened to me. I know how to do quantum codes. So I do readings and healing through quantum codes. And I
Okay.
hadn't been done it for a while. I was in the other side of the room. And then I was sitting with somebody and they were like, I want to do a reading for you, Dave. Okay, great, no problem. And I go, and I hear, no, you got to give her Uncle Dave, and which is a nickname of mine. And I was like, I have to do a reading for you. I go, Give me a second." And I walked over and I did a reading. And since then, she's called me a couple of times. It's a friend of mine, and she goes, every time you give me spot on. She goes, you don't hold back. I go, I'm not allowed to hold back. I've learned that
Right.
while even when I am unconfident, unconfident in my reading, I'm like, I know what I have to say, and it's just because I don't use that muscle as much as I maybe that I should, but I
Right.
use it in the other work that I do. So that's why
Yeah.
when I do work, I'm able to get through that. So after the realizing that your life was saved
Mhm.
and were you injured at all? I mean, obviously there's the
Oh, yeah.
fireball, and
Yeah. I had
was
8
there?
vertebrae out, whiplash, sprained ankle, heat blotches all over my body. Because when I came down the chute, I was the very last one to make it out of my section. It exploded and it burned to the ground. And if people go to my website, across the very top is the plane crash picture. And it's, donnahartley.com. And you'll see that slider and you will say the same thing that everybody looks at it. How did you live? Because all you see is flames and smoke. And every one of our 8 evacuation slides either burned or collapsed. So mine fell because it was burning as I was 3/4 down. So that last part, my back just went pop, pop, pop.
Sure, yeah.
But I got out up and I was running away. I got singed, from the flames and the
Yeah.
whole thing. But when people say, "Were you hurt?" And I go, "No," because not considering when you saw people that didn't make it. So,
Right. Yeah.
so
It's
I,
all relative.
yeah.
But
And then I turned around and I looked at the plane and I was holding the light or just that people get out, that they be alive. I was trying to do whatever I could, just thinking that. And then I heard this voice again, that voice that comes to us, and it says, that I chose to live,
Mhm.
and so my assignment was to speak, to write, and to help people help themselves. And I had no idea at that time what that meant. But I am an international speaker. I had 3 books out, and I help people. I coach and I do all that. So it took a while to unravel, but I went on to Hawaii. I emceed the pageant. I had shell shock probably for a month
Yeah,
to
I
two
can't
months.
imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got subpoenaed to testify at the national hearing to represent all the passengers because I was basically unhurt compared to them or hadn't been killed. And it was that moment that I said, I cannot do this. I went to our girlfriend's house. She called the head nurse from the burn ward, and I visited the burn ward where I saw some of the passengers.
Mm,
And Dave, I thought I was tough. I could smell human flesh, and I had to grab the table because I was just keeling.
sure.
And one of this lady said, come here, come here, come here. And I'm with the head nurse, and she said, let's walk over. She had me by the arm because I didn't think I could make it. And the lady said, I saw you on the plane. You were on the plane. I, I know what I just shook my head and I go, yeah. And she goes, it hurts because, she had part of her body burned and she's on egg cartons. And she said, don't let it happen. Tell someone else.
Wow.
That was the moment. I said, okay, someone, I guess that someone is me that
That
has
to
to
be the
represent.
voice.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that I had. So I waived my right to sue the airlines and I took on the airline industry and changes were made for safety regulations. So I thought I'd take the stand for 10 minutes and went on for hours and hours, but because they were grilling me because who wanted to pay that money,
Right.
millions of dollars with lawsuits. But when you know the truth and you speak just from the truth, like as a survivor, this is what we needed. This is what we should have had. This is what we needed. Then, I've always believed if you speak the truth, somehow it gets through.
Yeah,
So,
the responsibility shifts differently when you're speaking, when you're speaking the truth, but when you're doing it for others. You really sound like somebody who really gives back all the time to people. And that's that is a true gift, is always putting somebody else ahead of your own needs.
right. Well, you win anyway because you are living your truth and
Right.
you're living your passion. So, I say to people now, live your passion, live your truth, because you got a whole life ahead of you. You might as well be doing it. Start like you had to learn who to work for, who not to work for, figure it out, and I started my company early as a speaker because I didn't think anybody else would hire me. So there
Mm.
you go. So after the hearing, I just said, I guess I have to start doing this.
And you ran with it. Obviously very successful. And I guess all the negative things that you have experienced have taught you something positive to take away from.
Yeah, it's tough when you're going through the negative. All you see and all you feel is the negative. And I'm like any other human. I got caught in it a few times and I just kept going down and down and down, to finally I had to wake up and say, nobody's going to get me out of this hole. I have to do it. I have to hang on. I have to figure out another way to do it. And not that I liked it at times and not that I didn't cry and walk, night after night and not sleep and worry about it. But then I finally said, there is no one to save me. I have to be part of it. Once you get on the positive and want the help or listen or get the classes or what structure or
Yep.
whatever, then like you say, then the things start showing up. Like your doctor shows up or your appointment shows up or a job opportunity shows up, but you have to be part of the solution. When I talk to people going in for heart surgery, they go, well, my doctor will handle it all. And I go, hold a second.
Yep.
You got to be ready. You got to believe in perfect health, perfect surgery, perfect recovery. You can't drink, you smoke, get your body working, all those things that you can do. Then the doctors are going to do the best. But you
Right.
got to be in the best shape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the experience I just had when I had this, again, the stent, the doctors are like, you have to change your diet. I'm like, done. And,
Yeah.
the medication, done. I go for 6 months. I'm not even going to have a conversation with you about getting me off the medication, possibly. I go, I have to start taking care of myself. Done. Like,
Yep.
and they're like, "Do you understand how serious this is?" I go, "I do." I go, "That's why it's done. It's consider it done. It's not a question. I mean, I've changed my diet completely in the 1 month that I've experienced this,
Yep.
and it's done. Like, and they don't. They've this is a lot of people who say those things. Very few actually do it, and I'm like, no, you just watch me. That's why I have jumped back in to my passion. Even though it's my best friend, I was like, I'm not working here anymore. It's too stressful for me, not where I'm supposed to be. And
Mhm.
that's when all these interviews started coming. I mean, I'm now flooded doing the things that I'm doing, having more clients where I can help people get their
Mhm.
story aligned and the right stories. And
Well, that's what we talked about earlier. I said your Mercury,
yep,
Saturn and,
yep,
Saturn, Mercury in retrograde, Saturn return. It happens late 50s, 56 to about 62. And people hit it. So either you fight it or you say, I got to change. I had a friend of mine. He turned 60 and I said, you're going to lose the house if you don't quit this other thing. He lost his house. He called me and said, you are right. I am back in my business. I'm making money now, but I was losing money for those years. You know what I mean? He got it. And that's what happens to all of us. We either fight it and we keep going down, or you say, I got to change. And people don't believe they can change in 3 seconds. And I do. I believe we have that capacity. Like you said, got it, got
yep,
it, got it. And in the plane crash, I said, got it. I
yeah.
have to change my life. I got to leave Hollywood then. You know what I mean? I had to figure out what was in store for me because I wasn't on my path, you know?
Right. I mean, that's why, even before the stent going in, I took it a little lightly. I was like, okay, whatever, whatever. But when you lay there and seeing your heart, you're like, it's always good when you're watching it on TV and it's somebody else's heart. But the focus that we have when these
Yeah.
things happen to us,
Mhm.
and that's what it's really about. It's about us and finding and knowing what our real passions are, and that's where I'm, embracing all of this so so heavily. And you've done that as well, so once you had that vision, you really started taking it, on another level.
Yeah. I just knew I had to change, So I'm stubborn, I'm Irish, but when it hits me, then I go inside, I meditate, I think, and I go, it's not working the way it is now. So this is happening to open up my eyes. I sometimes cry, work it out, but then I say, okay, now I'm ready. Now I'm ready to change. So whether it's my health, whether it's business, to shift in business, I was an international speaker on 5 continents, and then the pandemic happened, and my career was over in 3 minutes. You
Mm.
know what I mean? So yes, do I still speak, but not as much as I do. I do past life reading, I do coaching, so I had a shift because life just shifted.
Yep. Yeah, you have to learn. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. So you had this intuitive, that you finally embraced, right? You might
Yeah.
have had some resistance originally, but you're not only just a regular medium. Like some people, can just do readings and don't try to
Right.
do anything. You have a past life. So is this the life? Because I was once told, Dave, by the time your days are over, and they didn't expect it to be a while, for a while, is, you're going to be complete here. And by that, they meant that all the past life trauma that I had brought along, I am
Mhm.
breaking the patterns. Could you explain something like that? Is
Okay.
that something
That
at
no,
one
that
point?
is right on. We are in what you'd call an ascending energy. And it started a few years back and it goes, we see a big switch by 3032, and by 3050, we don't even, I mean, 50, we don't even recognize, in the next 6 years, it'll be different. It's called ascending. Most humans are level 3. That's what there are energy. That's that cycle of karma repeating life after life after life. But we're breaking through to level 4. That's like a tunnel up to 5. That's telepathic. That's self healing. There's so many things we're going to learn. So, those of us that are saying, I have done this karma thing many, many lifetimes, like you, like me. So many people I talk to, they go, I'm done with this. I want to learn. I want to clear up everything. That's why we're on purpose helping people and talking that spiritual talk to say, yes, we can end this cycle. Past lives are only important to learn where the root of something is stopping you in this life from completing, like whether it's unworthiness or whether it's trauma, time to let go. But you also have gifts. That's what I read about. What are the gifts that you have? How do you highlight these? So clearing the past and getting the gifts makes us. So you're spot on for saying this is the last one on this dimension at this level, because there's so many other levels, so many other levels. And those, again, they have that telepathic, self healing. I mean, they can manifest things instantly. I mean, it's so much more than we think that because we think about just Earth. So we are limited in our thinking. But once you get past that, you go, oh my gosh, did I live in the time of Lemuria? Or did I live in Atlantis? Or did I live in a different galaxy? And all those things are possible. But people, that's a lot for people. So I didn't mention my gift for years because I can just clean a room. People say, you do what? You're a past life reader, and that's the end of that conversation. But more and more people are saying, so tell me about this. How does this work? And how does it apply to my life? See? So you're right on it. You see, you're clearing it up. You're moving up to those levels 4 and 5. So it's
Oh,
exciting.
yeah, I'm doing it. So how do you identify, or how do you relate to people who might not be ready to understand that message?
Well, I will say a few things, but if they're not ready or if they're ready to put me down, I go, you know what? We don't have to discuss this. When we both get to the other side, we'll have a conversation. So, you know, and but I'll say a few things, you know what I mean? And then they could look at
Yeah.
those things later, right? You know, that this exists, or this is a good book to read, or how about trusting your intuition during these uncertain times so you're safe, your family's safe, so you know where to be, you know, like not on a plane or not at a big event or something. So that way they're much more open. They go, yes, I want to trust my intuition.
Mm.
So that's where most people are open. That they go, oh yeah, I'd like to get rid of that stress I have. And I said, meditation. They go, yeah. I go, mindfulness, just sitting near a lake. And they go, I can do that. See?
Yeah.
So that's
Right. It's that perspective and bringing it to people so many different ways.
yeah, yeah. So people are only ready when they're ready. So
Yeah.
and
Right. You keep,
some ask very advanced questions and some are just at the beginning stages. And we all had to go through it. So yeah.
so what's one of the advanced questions that you'll enjoy hearing about?
Well, people want to know, do you know what Lemuria and Atlantis is? Do you know what those
Atlantis, I
are?
do. Lemuria, I'm
Okay.
not that familiar.
Those were two civilizations that existed before Earth as we know it. Lemuria was in the Hawaii part and the Pacific Islands, you know, there.
Mm.
Very advanced. Men and women were equal. They worked together. Again, that self healing, telepathic. This went on for years and years. It was really community living. Then there was Atlantis. So people want to know if they lived on this one or that one, you know? So,
Mm.
and Atlantis had technology and it had also spiritual. Now we're at the same point again on the planet. Spiritual was overtaken by technology. So now is why many people are raising their spiritual to keep them in balance because they work if they're in balance. Then other people say, I think I was in the galactic wars, you know, on the other
Mm.
dimension. Am I a Palladium? Am I a Arturian? So I
Yeah.
get those and they're really advanced. And I go, no, wait, let me see which planet you were on. You know what I mean? So people are knowing it because they have dreams
Mm.
about
Right.
it. That's how it comes up. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the crazy part. When I first learned about these quantum codes, we were through this class and everybody, it's always funny. Everybody is somebody famous.
Oh, yeah.
In my past life I was Cleopatra, I was this, I was that. And it came up to my turn and I was like, my name is Andrew. And they were like, "What? Like what are you talking about?" I go, "I was the somebody who helped King Solomon."
Oh,
And I was like, which is a little bit more like my personality. I don't have to be the leader. I
yeah.
like, I could be the quiet guy in the background, but I influence so much more, and I enjoy that. That's why some people
Yeah.
go, "Oh, you always talk on stage. You love the attention," and I'm like, "No, not really. I'm just as happy being quiet in my house. It took me a long time to get there to be like that,
Mhm.
but." It really happens. Now you've met your guides and angels, and
Right.
what does that mean when you meet? Besides Holly, how do you know that they're your guides?
Well, when I do the readings, and by the way, when I do a reading, I never do a famous life. Never. Because I don't want people get caught on that. I do lessons that are unfinished in this life and gifts that you're bringing in. So that I don't ever do that. And I don't look for that in mine ever either. I don't know if I ever had any because I never looked there. But I have my spirit guide here when I do a reading, and I call in their spirit guide because everybody has one.
Hmm.
And I ask them to guide me and make sure I tell them the right lives when I look at them. And people get to ask questions, ahead of time, which lives they want. But the very last one I do, their spirit guide speaks directly through me. Now, it only comes in that very last one because their energy is so much higher than mine. I can only pull it through me like once. You know what I mean? It's like the
Sure.
very last time because they got all this energy. I'm not at that level yet. So, but that is a direct message to them. I close my eyes and I say, this one's directly from there. But I think what else did I answer that question totally
Yeah,
already?
yeah,
What did
yeah.
you,
How you brought in
oh yeah,
the
yeah,
ascended masters?
yeah.
How do you know that they're
Oh,
yours?
okay.
But you know them because they're identifying that,
And I can
and
feel
you.
them. When I was on the other side, the Ascended Masters couldn't see them. They're little balls of light for me. But when I was above surgery, when I went out of my body for my heart surgery, I saw doctors with masks, just holograms. I saw with Native American, I had that there.
Mhm.
I had people from India there. So I saw them over looking at my body when it was below and the surgery. So I've seen them. I don't know all the names by any means. I
Right.
don't get all the names, but I can feel the energy. Yep.
Yeah, and because energy, I mean, that's why when we talk about energy work, I really enjoy it because that's the stuff that while we can't see it, we know it's there. That's that
Mhm.
intuition and things like that. But how do we identify, or how would you suggest to somebody to identify those unfinished patterns in our lives? Uh,
Well, there's a couple ways they show up. If you are aware and you slow down from the rat race and you get honest and say, I always pick this kind of relationship where they abandon me. Because, see, you've had an abandon issue from lots of other lives, but they say that's the third person or the fourth person that abandoned me. Then they can stop and say, why am I choosing that? And there's a lot of different ways to do that. First of all, you can meditate if you have that, and we'll get the answer that way. You go to a past life reader like me, or you get somebody that puts you back in that state. A lot of people go to therapy, but I believe you have to feel it in your body and in your heart and then let the pattern go. So,
mm,
because we all have it, but if you get honest and you go, yeah, I have this addiction pattern. So I conquered, gambling, but now I have food. See? So you got
you
addiction
just switched
pattern.
it, right? You
Yeah.
just switched
You
it
switch
for
it and you say, okay, what's causing that? That's because I don't love myself. See, that's where you have to go to the core because I felt, but in this life, I'm going to choose to change that and start to do things for myself that are self care. So those patterns are in everyone's life. You don't come in without patterns. No
right.
one does, but it's whether you choose to let them go and heal them honestly. So I say sometimes it takes screaming, crying, shouting, taking the bat, you know what I mean? Pound it on the sidewalk, whatever it takes to say that is the pattern, that is the fear, that's my anger. Then when you can finally let go. Okay. So I'm going to tell you a story about my 3 heart surgeries and why I had it. So I'll make it quick.
Sure.
When I went into the third one, I said, okay, this is a pattern. I know my family has died of heart disease, mother, father, and everyone, but I have a pattern and I have to figure it out. So I went back in time at past life and I saw myself as a street urchin, maybe 14, pretty, no parents, middle ages in a little village, in England, something like that. And the Lord of the Land's coming down on a horse and he sees me. I must have been pretty. He sends women the next day. They clean me up. They get me clothing because I was tattered. They gave me a little room with a bed and a fireplace and food. And yes, I was his mistress. But I was alive. I had food. I was living the best life I could ever imagine for years and years and years. And then I got pregnant. And I said, you must leave your wife. Not going to happen. You must leave your wife. Not going to happen. Then I had a miscarriage, but I lied to him. I didn't tell him the truth either. I said, you must marry me. He sent a henchman. I had my green cape on. I was walking around sunset. They got off the horse, the one, and they stabbed me in the heart. And David, at that moment, I hated him. I felt betrayed. My heart was broken. I couldn't trust a man. See what I mean? It all locked
Yep.
in that anger. But I also lied, and he lied to me. We both used each other. So it showed up in this life because I didn't really like myself or think in this life anyone would ever marry me. And I never married. I adopted my daughter on my own. See,
Mm.
that
Wow.
pattern was slight, but it was in there. I had a father that was violent with me and betrayed me. See? So I had
Mm.
all those patterns. And when I finally saw it, I went, oh my God. So I had to go in, and it took a lot of crying. I had to forgive myself for lying. I had to forgive the Lord of the land for betraying me. I had to forgive the two men that came, the one that stabbed me. I
Yep.
had to forgive them. Then the townspeople let me lay in the gutter for 3 days before they picked my body up and put it in a mass grave. I had to forget the people in the village that judged me. Once I did that and I went to my doctor, I go in every year. He said, I don't understand. Your heart's better than it's ever been. See?
Wow.
See, so we don't even know we're carrying those patterns. That's what past lives can clear. I had no idea. I mean, I thought it came from the family line because Irish and heart disease, but it did. But those were the lessons.
All right.
And I
Well,
had to get honest with myself and not judge myself. Yeah. And forgive myself. So,
yeah, that's really interesting because again, with my situation, I had two blocked arteries and the rest of my heart was almost, 20%, which is sort of appropriate for a 57-year-old. Um, especially with the lifestyle, but it was almost like two separate hearts. You wouldn't have
mm,
expected so much clean. And most people, when they meet me, they say, your heart, you're a heart-centered guy, which I was, and it's the center that almost killed me. But and that's the boundaries I now know. But that's interesting when you mention those stories, and I'm trying to apply it to myself and seeing it a little bit differently now.
see, that's why I say understanding it. Because
Yep.
when I do the readings, people go, oh, I never thought of that. Oh, I see it. But you got to really clear it and get honest. That's the whole
Sure.
thing. You have to
Right.
let it
A
go.
lot of people don't get honest with themselves.
Yeah, you got to get honest. And then you actually have to forgive yourself first. And then you have to forgive all the other people. So that's what they did in that lifetime. That's what they knew, and that's what I did. That's all I knew. So interesting. But yeah, see, so I know. I'm happy my heart is working and I'm happy your heart's working. Good.
Yep, and hopefully. All right. So as we get towards the end of the episode, I always have people walk into my magic garden,
Okay.
and what the magic garden is I'd love you to plant a seed, something that piece of advice or something. Because you've given us a lot of advice over the course of
Mhm.
this episode, or something that might not grow immediately that people can kind of sit and think on that they have to nurture it themselves to then grow in our garden.
That's a powerful question. I believe I would plant a seed that everyone would know they chose this life. They are here for a purpose. Doesn't have to be a grand purpose. It could be taking care of a grandchild or helping in a library. But every soul that comes in is perfect because it is loved when it comes in. We get caught in the earth energy, and that's when the plant doesn't grow and the seed gets stopped. And I'm saying that if you understand you are love, are here for a purpose. And if you start to live that passion, no matter what the world says, no matter what anybody else says, but what you want inside of yourself, then you know that this life has value and you can always complete what your destiny is. So it doesn't matter if you're don't have legs or are blind or not don't have money. That is all earth irrelevant stuff. It's the soul. So nurture the soul.
Man, I love that. Thank you so much. How can everybody find you?
Oh, well, I've got a website and it's under my name, Donna Hartley. com, and that's the one that's got the plane crash across the top. On the homepage, I put a brand new video called Zip It, Pay Attention, which is great about that meditation. And then there's a line called Past Lives on the bar, and they can watch, why do I feel unworthy? Have I lived here before? All those things. And my speaking things are on there. And you can contact me through that, through my website. Yeah,
All
that's
right.
about. And
Well,
I have a TV show out now on Soul Search TV, and it's running for 6 months. So that's a streaming one that you
where
go to.
can they find Soul Search?
It's called Soul Search. And if they just put it in Google, Soul Search TV, they're expos and whatever, and then go to the bar that says live TV. And I do 2 shows a month on
Okay.
there. So, and that's, like, have I lived before? And do my pets come back over and over again? And, how do I deal with the trauma that I have from other lifetimes, and all those topics that we kind of like wonder about, so they're all in there. They're interesting. So thank you. This was great. I wondered when I signed up, what does he mean? Peace, love, and bring the bat. Now I know.
Well, some of the bat is about uh playing around with my New York accent, but then the
Yeah.
bat is really about the bringing awesome thoughts
Yeah.
and being authentic today. And you've brought both awesome thoughts and authentically you and your story. And I'm so honored to have had you on as a guest.
Thank you. It was my honor to be here and to meet you. It was great.
Thank, thank you so much. And for everybody else, as always, we wish you peace and love as a great foundation to start your day. And when you need to bring that bat, hit your sweet spot, be awesome, have those awesome thoughts, and God bless.